Welcome to Austria and the Red Bull Ring for the 8th race of the International GTOpen season. We are here at the home of the Austrian Grand Prix, and this is the second race of the weekend, the slightly shorter 60-minute race, which will take us through to the summer break. Well, it's a very warm welcome from myself, Ben Evans, to an absolutely scorching day here just outside Spielberg in the Austrian hills. 32 degrees ambient air temperature. The track is a lot warmer than that. And inside the cockpits of the cars, the International GTOpen, it is going to be an absolute furnace. We are just about 4 minutes away from the cars embarking on the formation lap, and lining up in pole position is the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren of Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Parent. It's Parent who will be starting the race, and they won in the first race of Silverstone. They've had 2 fifth-place finishes since then. They would like to be back on the podium. Lining up in second place, it's the Villorba Course Ferrari of Alessandro Balzan and Nicola Benucci. Balzan is the driver who will start. Third on the grid, yesterday's race winners in the first, the AF Course Ferraris. That's Michele Rugolo and Passin Lathoras, and it's the driver from Thailand, Lathoras, who made that great move on Anton Neblitsky late on, who starts. Raffaele Giammaria will start from 4th place in the Ferrari that he shares with Ezequiel Perez-Companac, another of the AF Course entries. Watch the progress from 5th place of Matt Griffin. Griffin yesterday falling foul of track limits, but we can expect to see pushing very strongly early on, and he won't be hampered by handicap time when he hands over to Duncan Cameron. Lining up in 6th place, yesterday's runners-up, Anton Neblitsky and Alvaro Barber in the AERT Lamborghini Gallardo. Going the distance single-handedly once more, it's going to be Giorgio Roda, the reigning GTS champion in the AF Course Ferrari. And then Ilya Melnikov, the very rapid Russian driver, in one of the foremost of the GTM entries that he shares with Claudio Sadanovic. It's a very warm welcome back to the International GTOpen for the Taukanitsas, Alexander Taukanitsa Senior and Junior. And it is Alexander Taukanitsa Senior who will be starting the race. Thumbs up from Mads Rasmussen, the Danish driver, from the car that he shares with Felipe Barrieros. And both Rasmussen and Barrieros showing good pace and consistency out the course yesterday. And then Rafael Unzurazaga in the Radical RXC. Unzurazaga, another driver who will be going the whole way without a driver to relieve him, as the 1 minute board is shown to the cars, so the grid is beginning to be cleared. Spectators finding the best position to enjoy the action. Well, if you had tuned in hoping to see the Krypton Porsche, which was entered for this weekend and flying in free practice on Friday, unfortunately it flew a little bit too hard into the tyre wall at turn 1, and despite the very best efforts of the team, they couldn't get the car repaired with the parts they had available to them, so that was a reluctant withdrawal from the meeting. And also other commitments mean that Thomas Fleur has had to return home overnight, so he won't be able to take to the start today either, as the car's about to go on their green flag lap. In terms of the championship, well, it could not be closer. Yesterday's race win has been enough to elevate Michele Rugolo and Passin Lathoras to first in the championship, just 3 points clear of Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Parent, with then Sandro Balzan and Nicola Benucci. They're on 90 points. Rugolo and Lathoras 97, so they're 7 points back. And then Raffaele Giammaria and Ezequiel Perez-Companac still in the mix. So away we go on the green flag lap. So there are 3 classes to watch for in the course of today's race. There is the race overall, which is the GT Pro class. Then there's the GT Am class, which was very close yesterday and will be so doubtless again today. And then there's also the Cup class as well. But we have got the top 4 cars in the championship looking out the first 2 rows of the grid. Then we have got on row 3, Matt Griffin and the AERT Lamborghini. Those are cars that could both feature as the race unfolds and possibly be the spoilers in terms of the championship fight. All the cars, by the way, run on a Control compound Michelin tyre, which is a tyre that offers some great peak performance, but does take a couple of laps to come in. And we've seen drivers throughout the course of the season being a little bit caught out after the mid-race pit stop, because there is the mandatory pit stop, and that comes once we are 24 minutes into the action until we're 36 minutes into the race. And the way that success is balanced out in the International GTOpen is the drivers on the podium in the preceding races pick up additional success seconds for their mandatory minimum pit stop time. Now, for the main protagonists today, Rugla and Lathoros are looking at an extra 25 seconds in the pits. Balzan and Bonucci is 20 seconds. Noblitsky and Barber 10 seconds. Alvaro Parent and Miguel Ramos just 5 seconds. So a good start to the race for the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. And this could be a second win of the season for Parent and Ramos. Ramos, runner-up in the last 2 editions of the International GTOpen, but it is the 2007 Formula Renault 3.5 litre champion, Alvaro Parent, who will be starting the race in the absolutely immaculate McLaren. Alongside him on the front row of the grid, the former Ferrari Challenge Europe, former Grand Am GT champion, Alessandro Balzan. That is the black velour course Ferrari, and that's the driver who'll take it over from Balzan later on in the race, Nicola Bonucci, who has made the step up to international competition this year from Italian GT racing and is acquitting himself very well. So it's a rolling start that we've got to look forward to as the pace car is about to peel to one side. Then the race will be underway, as it is going to be Alvaro Parent who takes the responsibility of pacing the field downhill through turn 8. Then they've got turn 9. When they emerge from turn 9, they will see the gantry, and when the lights on the gantry change, then we will be going racing for the 8th time this season in the International GTOpen. The cars rumble on their way now as we look to the gantry. And away we go. Who gets the jump from the line? It's a rocket of a start from Giorgio Roda, and not such a good start at all from Alvaro Parent, who is going to be swamped by both Balzan and Gianmaria as they head towards turn 1. Oh, there's contact between Pacin Lathoras and Anton Neblitsky. Giorgio Roda also caught up in that. So they come through turn 1, and it's Balzan from Gianmaria, then Alvaro Parent, Pacin Lathoras, Anton Neblitsky, Matt Griffin. Already Balzan defending from Raffaele Gianmaria. Gianmaria looking to the outside at turn 2. And for Alvaro Parent, such frustration from pole as Griffin tries to elbow his way past the AERT Lamborghini. Also William Melnikov looking to pull a move early on Giorgio Roda. Balzan defends into turn 3. Now the pace that Balzan was showing in qualifying suggests that he might be able to streak clear, but Parent will be looking to close onto his tail. Now, is that a little bit of damage to the tail of Alvaro Parent's car? Can't quite see. It's just to the rear left of the car. We'll see it possibly when he comes through turn 7 now. Possibly just a little bit of trim hanging on Alvaro Parent's car, because it was very, very tight into turn 1. As Parent now gets the move on Gianmaria and sees space the inside Gianmaria into turn 8. Lovely pass from Alvaro Parent, but yes, he does have some damage to the rear diffuser. Get a good view of it then. Now, didn't see quite the moment there for Raffaele Gianmaria, but Alvaro Parent able to take advantage and immediately sets off in pursuit of Alessandro Balzan. The field hurtle towards turn 1. Balzan out to the curb, and the 4 cars foremost in the championship out front. Then we've got Anton Neblitsky busy defending from Matt Griffin. Giorgio Roda looking to try and join in that fight as well, but the sun glinting off the immaculately prepared AF Course Ferrari of Matt Griffin, who looks to the outside of Anton Neblitsky. Neblitsky, though, is going to get his elbows out here, covers the inside line, makes a little bit of contact with Griffin. Griffin gets past Neblitsky, and the Russian loses out to William Melnikov and Giorgio Roda, and it's Roda who's the big winner from all of that, as Alvaro Parent now attempts to turn up the heat on the race leader. But there you see the damage to the rear of the Ferrari here, of the McLaren rather. Here is the pass from Alvaro Parent. Now, what will be a little bit concerning, possibly to the team, is the way that Bodywork's grinding off the road. There was the contact between Neblitsky and Griffin. Neblitsky determined to maintain the inside line, but as he ran out wide, there wasn't really anywhere for him to go in the Lamborghini. And now Parent in pursuit of Balzan. Raffaele Gianmaria staying with them, passing the Thoras, just beginning to slip back ever so slightly as we conclude the second lap of the race. Now the consolation here for Alvaro Parent is he knows that with the success seconds, the Theo Martin Motorsport McLaren will be in the pits for 15 seconds less than Alessandro Balzan, provided all goes well. But really, Parent would like to get clear of the Vauxhall Ferrari and streak away, because the big concern is going to be that if Balzan and Parent start battling, that's going to bring Raffaele Gianmaria and also passing Lathoras into the mix. These four cars to the fore of the championship, they're only separated by 11 points. And Balzan trying to break clear of the McLaren, not succeeding on arrival into turn 3. Meanwhile, Matt Griffin up behind Giorgio Roda. Both drivers very familiar faces within the International GTOpen, and Griffin, knowing that Roda's going to do the whole race on his own, would like to try and clear the Italian if he can, and maybe try and race up to the leading quartet. As now Griffin goes to the move into turn 6. Does Roda see him coming? He does, but he doesn't really want to give him any room, so they run side by side through 7. Griffin's going to keep his foot in and then look for the switch back to turn 8. That's exactly what he does. We wait for them to come over the crest of the hill. Here comes Griffin to the inside line. Is he near enough? Yes, he does. He goes through. Great stuff from Matt Griffin as he heads through the final corner. Meanwhile, Alvaro Parent is lining up a move on Alessandro Balzan into turn 1, but he's not near enough to try. Parent, though, setting the fastest lap of the race last time through. Giorgio Roda has now got Ilya Melnikov to concern himself with. Melnikov, who finished 9th in last year's Italian Carrera Cup, as again Parent looks to apply the pressure to Balzan, and as the pair of them battle, Raffaele Gianmaria needs no second invitation to join this fight. Glorious day here at the Red Bull Ring, but scorchingly hot. Managing those Michelin tyres is going to be key. Managing driver temperature is also going to be important, as Balzan, Parent and Gianmaria just beginning to ease away from passing Lathoras. As Parent closes up again onto the tail of Balzan. Balzan in the Vauxhall Ferrari rides the curbs through 7. So does Parent. They come over the crest in the hill. One of the classic Red Bull Ring shots, just brushing the meadow to the side of the track there. Alvaro Parent using every single inch of road available to him just to try and get that advantage over the Vauxhall Ferrari, but it doesn't work out. So another lap completed, and still the pressure continues, but Sandro Balzan knows exactly where he needs to place his car. He's going to let Alvaro Parent do all of the hard work, but the Vauxhall Ferrari just kicks its tail through turn 1. Now that's interesting. In 5th place, Matt Griffin sets the fastest lap of the race, and Griffin only a couple of seconds back from this scrap will be looking to chase down if he can. I thought for a moment Alvaro Parent was going to go for it. He thinks better of it, but he remains nose to tail with the race leader out of turn 2. The road just rolls downhill from this back section. Again, on the brakes is Sandro Balzan. Raffaele Gianmaria is staying with them. Gianmaria was the fastest of the leading trio last time through, not unsurprisingly. The car they probably need to really concern themselves with is Matt Griffin, and how quickly, because Griffin was only 5 seconds back from the race leader at the start of the lap, how quickly Griffin can potentially reel them in if they keep squabbling on towards the end of lap 5. I don't think we're going to see a challenge from Parent in these final couple of turns. Instead, what he's going to probably focus on is trying to force a mistake like that from Alessandro Balzan, and then maybe to pounce coming out of turn 1, the long climb uphill. That's where we've seen the bulk of the overtaking this weekend, as through they come. And that's a personal best lap of the race from Alessandro Balzan, a 1 minute 31.7. 1 minute 31.6 though for Matt Griffin gives him the fastest lap once more. Look there, you can just see the Ferrari working a little bit harder than the McLaren. And Perent not close enough to challenge at the summit of the circuit. But as he and Balzan run in tandem, it does give them the opportunity just to build those extra couple of car lengths over Raffaele Giammaria. And that's really what they might be wanting to do, because what they don't want to do is have Giammaria fighting with them as well. But it's always that the challenge in these relatively short races in the International GT Open. Do you fight for position, or do you just run to a lap time and then see how the race unfolds? Well, Perent has dropped back a little bit from Balzan on this lap. I just wonder whether or not that is to get a little bit more clear air flowing into the McLaren, because it is very, very hot out there. There in fourth place is the championship leader, passing the Thoras. That is Michele Rugolo, who will be taking command of the AF Corse Ferrari mid-race. And it's the sister car of Matt Griffin, which is closing in on the Thoras, a tune of 0.8 of a second per lap. Griffin leaps down through the compression at the bottom of the track and completes the lap as another good lap from Alessandro Balzan. In fact, that's the fastest lap of the race from Balzan, so he stretches the advantage over Alvaro Perent out to the best part of a second now. It's a further second back to Raffaele Giammaria. But then Griffin goes fractionally faster still. As for the first time in the race, as we're 10 minutes in, just a few glimpses of daylight between the leading trio. Balzan having another excellent lap, and Perent slipping back. Meanwhile, here is Giorgio Reda. He's got Ilya Melnikov in pursuit. Then we have got Anton Neblitsky doing battle with Alexander Taukanitsa. Neblitsky in the ART Lamborghini was involved in the thick of the action early on. A little bit of contact with Matt Griffin. Hopefully hasn't affected the handling too much of the Gallardo. But he has certainly got Taukanitsa hassling with him. This is the fight for 8th and 9th position. Flashing his headlights, Taukanitsa. I don't think Neblitsky requires any reminding that Taukanitsa is there, as the Lamborghini uses all of the curb. Taukanitsa just using a little bit less of the road, and again the Lamborghini moving more than you'd want it to be doing in these relatively early stages of the race, and it means that Melnikov has been able to gap Neblitsky to the tune of a couple of seconds. But Taukanitsa runs wide out of turn 8 into the final corner on the lap. This is complete lap 7. We are just over 10 minutes in. Alessandro Balzan leads from Alvaro Perent. Raffaele Giammaria is 3rd. Passing the Thoras 4th. Matt Griffin is 5th. Giorgio Reda 6th. Ilya Melnikov 7th. Anton Neblitsky in 9th. Alexander Taukanitsa in 10th. And then Mads Rasmussen, or rather Taukanitsa in 9th. Rasmussen in 10th. And then Rafael Unzaga currently to the head of the Cup class. And Perent just content to ride shotgun to Balzan at the moment, as Matt Griffin trying to close up on passing the Thoras. Griffin again 0.3 quicker than the Thoras last time through. The gap between the pair of them at the end of the lap was 1.2 seconds. I think it's going to be a little bit less than that by the time they conclude this one. It's the turn of Raffaele Giammaria possibly to run out wide on this occasion. Giammaria, twice a winner this season, with victories in Estoril and Silverstone. The race leader, Alessandro Balzan, he has only won once, as has Alvaro Perent. There's also been 2 wins to enjoy for Michele Rugolo. And passing the Thoras. And the lap's being reeled off very rapidly. That's a better lap from Perent, but Griffin now right onto terms with the Thoras in the fight for 4th and 5th. And Matt Griffin now beginning to ask the questions and passing the Thoras. Great run through the first corner from Griffin now. Is that going to give him the opportunity to challenge the Thoras up the hill? Depends just how hard the Thoras wants to defend. In fact, he signals he's going to give Griffin racing room. Well, the pair of them are teammates, and there is no point with the championship on the line for the Thoras to defend unduly, particularly As for the second half of the race, Michele Rugolo is typically a little bit quicker than Duncan Cameron, who'll be taking over from Matt Griffin. So Griffin instead is released to see if he can chase down the 3 seconds or so to Raffaele Giammaria. That's where Griffin's task gets that little bit harder, as Balzan is steadily increasing the pace as we approach 1/4 race distance, setting the fastest lap last time through, a 1:31.4. Perent matching him pretty much stride for stride, a 1:31.5 from Alvaro, and then a 1:31.7 from Raffaele Giammaria. So although the gap between the leading trio is opening, it's only opening by fractions of a second. Now what does Balzan produce on this occasion? It's not quite faster still, but instead the fastest lap of the race goes to Alvaro Perent, to 1:31.2. So Perent coming back towards Balzan. Giammaria in third also does his personal best of the race, and crucially for Giammaria, it's a little bit quicker than the time mustered by Matt Griffin. But in terms of the pit stop strategies, you'd expect to see Balzan and Perent staying out reasonably late into the pit window, possibly the same for Raffaele Giammaria, certainly the same for Matt Griffin, whereas in 5th place, Passin Thoras will probably jump in just before half race distance to hand over to Michele Rugolo. So we can expect to see this group of cars probably out on track for the best part of another 20 minutes. The pit window itself opens in just over 9 minutes' time. So here is a look at Rafael Unzarazaga having a huge moment through turn 8 across the grass. Radical RXC Coupe working his lawnmower. Now I hope that all that grass he's accumulated there, Unzarazaga, isn't going to result in the radiator becoming a bit clogged and the car overheating. So this is the end of lap 10, and this time around it is Balzan who's on course for a better lap than Perent, although neither driver improves on the marks set on the previous occasion, nor does Giammaria in third, but Matt Griffin in fourth does. So Griffin inching closer to Giammaria. The gap between them, 3.2 seconds. In 5th, Passin Thoras has slipped a couple of seconds back from Griffin. 6th is Giorgio Roda, who has shaken off Ilnur Melnikov. 7th, Anton Neblitsky has now got some daylight over Alexander Taukanitsa in the fight for 8th and 9th. And then Mads Rasmussen running 2nd in the GTM class to Ilnur Melnikov. Not quite within touching distance of Taukanitsa at the moment. So the battle amongst the leading group of cars. Now a little bit of dust being kicked up through the right-hander, but it was just some dust possibly on the curbs rather than any particular problem for Balzan. Balzan managing that gap to Perent, which would appear to have possibly gone out a little bit. We'll find out as they come through to the end of the sector. Indeed it does, by a 1/10 of a second or thereabouts. And there in the back of the picture you can see Matt Griffin. Griffin doing all he can to close in on Giammaria. That's Giammaria's co-driver, Ezequiel Perez-Kompanak. So Giammaria heads over the grid hatchings, completes the 11th lap of the race, and the gaps between the leading trio open out commensurately once more. The gap between Giammaria and Griffin does come down, however. Matt Griffin now within 3 seconds of Raffaele Giammaria. Another mid 1:31 second lap for Griffin. Don't forget, Matt Griffin, because of finishing 8th yesterday, doesn't have any pit handicap time to concern himself with. For Alvaro Perent in second place, it's just 5 seconds. So that is potentially going to be something to consider. There's also no pit handicap time for Giammaria and Perez-Kompanak because they have been off the podium. So we could see quite a different dynamic as the race unfolds. It would be a very good battle as well, you'd have to suggest, between Miguel Ramos and Ezekiel Perez-Compenac, and that is why I think Alvaro Prent will be slightly frustrated not to have had a clean run at this after the start, having been jumped by the Ferraris. Balzan, though, setting a strong pace. Prent staying with him, and Alvaro now 2.3 seconds up on Gianmaria as they swoop to the conclusion of another lap. We're at 1/3 race distance almost. Balzan leads as he has done since the start from Prent and Gianmaria. And Alvaro builds his buffer over Gianmaria out by another 1/10 of a second. Gianmaria in turn caught by a couple of 1/10ths of a second by Matt Griffin. There is Miguel Ramos in the Teo Martin Motorsport garage, readying himself to take over the car as Sandro Balzan, another driver looking for his second win of the season. The Valour course team have been at the sharp end of the International GT Open for several seasons, most recently champions back in 2013 with Andrea Montermini. Last year, Montermini and Nicolo Sciero came very close to claiming the crown. We're in the hunt going into the final meeting of the season. There is Ilya Melnikov, who is just beginning to be reeled in once more by Anton Neblitsky. Neblitsky now he's been able to not get involved in traffic, just beginning to accelerate his pace slightly, trying to chase down his compatriot as they are through the midsection of the circuit. Two left-handers. The ART Lamborghini Gallardo has become an increasingly competitive proposition as the season's unfolded. There is the driver who will take over the car, Alvaro Barber, and we can probably expect to see Barber taking the car on reasonably early in the pit window, which is just 4 minutes away from opening now. And there's 36 minutes left in the clock. Drivers can start to begin their pit stops. That's why we're seeing the preparations now in the garages. It's Claudio Sedanovic in the red suit, Ezekiel Perez-Compenac in the black. On track, no change in the order though. Balzan from Prent, 1.6 seconds between them. Then Gianmaria, almost 3 seconds back. Matt Griffin now lapping at a very comparable time to Raffaele Gianmaria, so that gap remaining relatively stable. It's all going to come down now to pit stop strategy. So 1/3 distance, Balzan the race leader, Prent second, Gianmaria is third, Matt Griffin in fourth, passing the Thoras in fifth, Giorgio Roda sixth, Ilya Milnikov in seventh from Anton Neblitsky, Alexander Taukanitsa, and then completing the top 10 is Mads Rasmussen. It's just riding the curbs, the leading duo. And this race maybe not unfolding as we were expecting. The talk in the paddock at lunchtime was that if Prent could get the start, he was going to romp off into the distance, but Valour course and Alessandro Balzan having different plans. And Balzan and Benucci currently on a run of 3 podiums in a row, a second and a third at Silverstone, a third place finish yesterday. Will they be on the rostrum once more? I think the challenge for Balzan is that however good this stint has been, the top 10 in the field are still only separated by 30 seconds. And if you think that Balzan and Benucci have got a 20-second pit handicap based on their success in previous races to overcome, then that is still a pretty vertical learning curve as Taukanitsa goes for a move on Neblitsky and elbows his way past. Anton Neblitsky squeezing Taukanitsa towards turn 1, but Alexander Taukanitsa having absolutely none of it and committing to the move. And just a few moments ago, we saw Anton Neblitsky closing on Ilya Melnikov, but it was a stunning lap from Alexander Taukanitsa last time round, a 1:31.8 from Taukanitsa to get onto terms with Neblitsky and then forcing his way through into 8th position. Now that was the sort of move you'd associate more with Formula Ford racing rather than international GTs, but Taukanitsa saw the gap, was determined to take advantage of it. Well, we're on the 15th lap of the race here at the Red Bull Ring. So we're just into the second half of the International GT Open season. Still 4 duo separated by 8 points of championship. Now here is how it all set up. Neblitsky making the move, or making the mistake through turn 9. Gave Talkanitsa the chance to draw alongside door handle to door handle. I think if that had ended badly, there would have possibly been a conversation over in race control. So I think there would certainly be a debate about whether sufficient racing room was given. Nonetheless, Talkanitsa makes his way past, neither car damaged. Balzan on his 16th lap, 1.6 seconds clear of Alvaro Prent. Prent in turn now 3.2 seconds up on Gianmaria, who has been caught by half a second last time round by Matt Griffin. Griffin doing his personal best lap of the race, so he is fractionally over 2 seconds back now from Raffaele Gianmaria. Here is Mads Rasmussen, and Rasmussen is the next driver who will be taking his turn to see if he can overhaul Anton Neblitsky, as the pit window is now open for the driver changes. On this lap, we would potentially be expecting to see in Passin Lathoras, and that is probably it in terms of the front runners. We might also be seeing Alexander Talkanitsa and Anton Neblitsky ducking in. So certainly none of the leading trio pull to the pits, nor does Matt Griffin in fourth. All of that quartet will probably remain on track towards the tail end of the pit window. We have got a couple of cars that will be due in imminently. And here is one of them, the championship leader then, Passin Lathoras to pass over to Michele Rugolo. It's going to be a long old stint this for Rugolo, because they've got 25 seconds rather of pit handicap to contend themselves with. So out gets Lathoras, in hops Rugolo. New set of boots as well for Rugolo. Also in is the ART Lamborghini. Alvaro Barber, former International GTOpen champion, going back to 2010. So third in the championship in 2012. And he hands over to Anton Neblitsky. So out hops the slightly taller figure of Neblitsky as Barber jumps in now. What can Alvaro Barber do? Meanwhile, Alessandro Balzan continues to lap steadily in the low 1 minute 41 second bracket, and you can see that he's begun to break the resistance of Alvaro Prent. Prent last time was 2.5 tenths of a second slower than Balzan. What can the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren driver do on this occasion? Well, again, I think the lap is going to be a slightly better one for Balzan, as Balzan streaks across line and sets his personal best lap of the race, a 1 minute 31.3, so 1 minute 31.6 for Prent. So the gap from first to second out now to 2.2 seconds. Gianmaria 3.5 seconds back from Prent, and now only 1.3 seconds up on Matt Griffin. So the fight for third and fourth about to come together. The big question is, what sort of pace are we going to be seeing from Michele Rugolo and Alvaro Barber in relation to the race leaders as they get on their way and up to speed. So there at the back of your picture, headlights ablaze, Matt Griffin in pursuit of Raffaele Gianmaria. Griffin, a single-seater contemporary of Lewis Hamilton in Great Britain, going back, well, over 10 years or so ago now in Formula Renault 2-litre racing, before making the transition relatively early in his career to GT cars, and thereafter Griffin has become established as one of the top international GT racers. Raffaele Gianmaria, another driver who had a successful single-seater career all the way up the ladder to Formula 3000, which was the predecessor to GP2, before again moving across to GT racing. So neither driver going to be heading towards the pits on this, the 18th lap of the race, but that was a little bit more wayward from Gianmaria through turn 8, and that will potentially bring Griffin to within a second or so of Gianmaria as they come across the line. Indeed it does. Griffin setting another fastest lap of the race, so 1 minute 31.249 for Matt Griffin as he reels in Gianmaria. This isn't to suggest that Gianmaria is slacking off the pace. Into the pit lane now for his pit stop is Giorgio Roda, but don't forget, Roda is going to go the full 60 minutes on his own, so the only alteration really in the pit stops is going to be a new drinks bottle for the Italian. Alessandro Balzani's lead over Alvaro Pren creeping up by a few hundredths of a second on that last lap. It's still about 2.2 seconds. The other, of course, element during the pit stops is going to be the inspection of the damage to the rear diffuser of the McLaren that was sustained in the run towards the first corner. And the bodywork's just been hanging a bit loose thereafter. Now, whether or not that's affected the performance of the McLaren, we will doubtless be finding out as we are almost at half race distance. The pit window open for another 7 minutes. And none of the leading quartet showing any inclination to peel towards the pits on this occasion. They all head out on to lap 20 as Griffin a little bit closer once more to Raffaele Gianmaria in the fight for third and fourth. That gap now down to just about half a second. Michele Rugolo, his first flying lap, a 1:32.0. For Alvaro Barber, it was a 1:31.7. So immediately Rugolo and Barber on the pace. They're separated by about 5 seconds or so. That's going to be the real key, isn't it? Is how that all feeds through once the pit stops have cycled. I suspect that Barber and Rugolo will be behind this leading quartet just because of the impact of the pit handicap seconds. As Gianmaria deep on the brakes into turn 3. He has got Matt Griffin looming on his tail, but Griffin knows that Gianmaria is embroiled in a title fight and therefore will know better than to unduly risk the car to try and force the move on his teammate. At the same time, Griffin is in it to win it, as the cliche would go, and therefore there's absolutely no desire on Griffin's part to just sit back and ride shotgun. So almost exactly half race distance and 20 laps about to be completed. Alessandro Balzan has led ever since the start of the race from Alvaro Pren, and then we've got Raffaele Gianmaria in third, but now Matt Griffin glued to his tail, headlights ablaze. Now, can Griffin force some sort of mistake from Gianmaria at turn 1, because it will be the route uphill that will give Griffin his best opportunity. Gianmaria certainly working the car a little bit harder than Griffin, but it doesn't present an opening particularly for Griffin. In terms of Rugolo and Barber, they're now both into the 1:31 brackets, 1:31.9s apiece. As through turn 2, Griffin carrying a little bit more corner speed into the corner than Gianmaria, but he can't really propel himself out of the turn quite as he would have wanted to. So Gianmaria able to survive for a few more turns. At the back of the picture, you could catch a glimpse there of Michele Rugolo. He is a lap down. We've got 2 other pit stops in progress, and this is one of them. Felipe Barrieroth to take over from Mads Rasmussen, and also Alexander Salkanitsa Jr. to take over in the 57 Ferrari. Well, this hasn't been such a good lap for Matt Griffin, as he is bottled up behind Raffaele Gianmaria. If they really want it, they've got time for 2 more laps before they absolutely have to make their pit stop. The pit window closes when there are going to be 24 minutes remaining on the clock, and certainly they're going to go for at least 1 more roll of the dice, and that is the case for all of the leading quartet. The only other car that's not pitted in is Ilya Melnikov to hand over to Claudio Sedanovic. And again, Gianmaria just a little bit untidy on the way through turn 1, and there is Alexander Salkanitsa Jr., who emerges from the pits in front of the fight for third position. And imagine there might be a little bit of communication on the radio. Salkanitsa saying, don't get embroiled in this, and that's exactly what I thought was going to happen. But Salkanitsa, if anything, just slowing Gianmaria, as Salkanitsa's running his own race, and he might find himself battling with these cars by the time that the pit stops have all cycled on. But Gianmaria is going to force the Lapri into turn 3, and Matt Griffin follows the hole in the air. The lead for Balzan over Perrin is 2.6 seconds. This fight is a further 4 seconds further up the road. Now are we going to see either Gianmaria or Griffin ducking in on this occasion? As I say, they've got time for one more lap, but it would appear as if Gianmaria certainly is going to go for the pit lane, and also Matt Griffin. So a great battle for third place between Gianmaria and Griffin, and they decide that enough is enough. So it'll be Duncan Cameron who takes over from Matt Griffin, and Ezequiel Perez-Companac from Raffaele Gianmaria. So this is going to have to be the in-lap of in-laps for Alvaro Perrin, because he has got an additional 5 seconds in the pits compared to Perez-Companac, and that could be absolutely crucial, because if they can feed Ramos out ahead of Perez-Companac, that might give the T.O. Martin Motorsport McLaren the opportunity for a second victory of the season. Giorgio Roda out of the pits and running on the road ahead of Alessandro Balzan. And Balzan and Perrin will need to make their driver changes at the end of this 23rd lap. Pit window closing with just 24 minutes left on the clock, and they're not going to have time to squeeze another lap out of it before that window comes to an end. And this has been an excellent performance from Balzan, qualifying in second. And the Villorba Course team know from experience the way to claim the International GTOpen crown is not necessarily to win the most races. It's about picking up the points as often as possible through the season. It's into the pit lane now for Balzan. So he has got 20 seconds of pit handicap time. Alvaro Perrin has got 5 seconds of pit handicap time. So it's Nicola Benucci who takes over from Balzan. It's Miguel Ramos who takes over from Perrin. The two cars roll to a halt. Door open on the McLaren. Perrin is out. Ramos gets in. Likewise, Benucci strapped into the cockpit of the Villorba Course Ferrari. And the car that they're racing, as we can sense from our timing screen, is that of Ezequiel Perez-Companac. Here is Michele Rugolo, and Rugolo at the summit of the circuit, currently in 8th place, and there is Claudio Sadanovic taking over from Ilya Melnikov. So for Rugolo, he's actually behind Giorgio Roda, he's behind Alexander Talkanitsa Jr., and has got quite a lot of ground to make up. Now there is the possibility, with an eye towards the championship, that those two cars, because they both run from the AF Course stable, won't necessarily put up a huge degree of resistance. Right, here comes Perez-Companac, and there is the race. You can see Miguel Ramos up out of the pit lane. Perez-Companac arrives into turn 1. This is for the lead of the 8th race of the season in the GTOpen, and it is going to be Perez-Companac who jumps Miguel Ramos. So Ezequiel Perez-Companac, essentially the leader of the race. And a problem for Nicola Benucci. The Villorba Course Ferrari doesn't appear to be wanting to fire up. So Benucci's chances taking a big hit. Now this is going to be the battle to enjoy and savour. Perez-Companac and Raffaele Gianmaria, 2 times they've won this season. This would be their 3rd win. For Ramos and Perrin, they've just had that solitary victory, but have been metronomically consistent when it comes to getting a good points finish in each and every race. And already Ezequiel Perez-Companac, by the benefit of having had that extra lap to warm up the Michelin tyres, easing away from Ramos. But will Ramos be able to fight back? Perez-Companac, the reigning Ferrari Challenge Europe champion, running a little bit wide through turn 7. You can see just how hard he is pushing. Nicola Benucci in the Villorba Course Ferrari, by the way, still yet to emerge from the pit. So disaster for the race leading Ferrari. It's not firing up in the pit lane. And so all of that hard work from Alessandro Balzan potentially going to result in no benefit for them, no points to them. That would see them slipping adrift in the championship. So over the line for Ezequiel Perez-Companac, he leads the race by 1.3 seconds from Miguel Ramos. In third place, it is Duncan Cameron. And there is the work on the Villorba course Ferrari. Sad to see, and that's never good when the engine cover gets popped. In fourth place, we've got Giorgio Roda. Roda's 6 seconds back from Cameron. Fifth place is Alexander Taukenitz Jr. Sixth is Michele Rugolo. In seventh place, it's Claudio Sadanovic. Eighth place, Alvaro Barber, but that's likely to change very quickly. Squirming on the brakes is Ezequiel Perez-Companac. Now that Ramos is up to speed, the McLaren 0.3 quicker than Perez-Companac through the first sector on the lap. Meanwhile, this was the change we were expecting. Alvaro Barber moving past Claudio Sadanovic. Sadanovic, though, is still the GTOpen class leader. And Barber, well, how far up the order will he be able to progress? There is certainly going to be a battle for third place between Duncan Cameron and Giorgio Roda. That could be quite enjoyable. There's also Michele Rugolo, who is about to catch Alexander Taukenitz Jr. So we've still got a third of the race remaining. Perez-Companac, the race leader. Now, what has Miguel Ramos been able to do on his first real flying lap in earnest? The answer is it was 0.3 slower than Perez-Companac, so the gap between the pair of them goes out now to 1.6 seconds. And for Gianmaria and Perez-Companac, this would result in 22 points for their championship. For Ramos and Prent, it would be worth 18 points, so that would, provided that Michele Rugolo doesn't make too much progress, be enough to reinstall Miguel Ramos. Now Alvaro Prent at the top of the standings. Rafael Di Gianmaria just passing on some feedback to the AF course mechanic, possibly to tell Ezequiel Perez-Companac. As now, Nicola Bonucci, we thought he was about to be fired up. He finds a gear and gets on his way, but Bonucci will join in some 2 laps down. So a great shame for Bonucci, and potentially critically important for the championship, because the championship contenders, that would be basically the second non-points finish for the Villorba course Ferrari. As downhill onto the end of lap 26 for Ezequiel Perez-Companac. It's been another good lap in comparison to Miguel Ramos, and therefore Perez-Companac's lead is going to open up a little bit further still. Indeed, it does by further 0.4 of a second. So Perez-Companac leads by almost 2 seconds from Miguel Ramos in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. In third place, however, Duncan Cameron is being caught quite quickly by Giorgio Roda. The gap between Cameron and Roda is down to just 2.9 seconds. So that is likely to change between now and the end of the race. And here comes Michele Rugolo in 6th place. In pursuit, Alexander Taukenitz Jr. Now Rugolo, will he be able to find the way past Taukenitz? If he can and gets up into 5th place, the pace that Rugolo is running with the time remaining, 4th or even 3rd is not beyond the realms of possibility, because Rugolo and Taukenitz are both catching Duncan Cameron, and Rugolo also catching Giorgio Roda based on current running. So Rugolo looks to try and ease past Taukenitz heading along the back straight. Now looks to try and challenge on the brakes. Taukenitz sees him coming, and Rugolo squeezes past the inside. So that's 5th position for Michele Rugolo, who kicks up the dust by way of celebration. Taukenitz slides to 6th. Alvaro Barber in 7th is only 5 seconds back as well. So Rugolo is from 5th position, potentially going to claim 8 points as a result of all of this. There was the move from Rugolo. There is Miguel Ramos in second place. Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac now over 3 seconds clear, and that wasn't such a good lap last time through for Miguel Ramos. A 1 minute 32.8. But second position for Ramos and Perem would still be a very solid result that would net them significant championship points haul. There is going to potentially be a change for third place imminently between Duncan Cameron and Giorgio Roda. And that battle occurring only 12 seconds up the road ahead of Michele Rugolo. And the pace that Rugolo's been running, he would potentially be able to certainly catch Cameron, if not Giorgio Roda as well. So Perez-Compagnac eases out of turn 7. His pursuer, Miguel Ramos, just struggling to get onto terms, and this is going to be an excellent lap, I suspect, for Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. He has set the fastest middle sector of anybody in the race as he now applies his right foot to the throttle, comes through, concludes lap 28, and that is his personal best lap of the race, a 1 minute 31.5. Ramos exactly a second slower, so the gap between the pair of them goes out to 4.1 seconds. Ramos, though, doesn't have any concerns about happenings behind him. Alvaro Prent watches on from the pit wall. Giorgio Roda now within a second of Duncan Cameron in the fight for third place, which is 12 seconds behind this one as Michele Rugolo sets the fastest lap of the race. So Rugolo goes fastest in fifth position, a 1 minute 31.196 from Michele Rugolo. And now how many points can he and Passin Lathoras come away from the afternoon with, particularly with the problems for Nicola Bonucci, who circulates down in 10th place. Right, here is the battle for third position. Giorgio Roda, the all-scarlet number 56 car, chasing down number 52 car, Duncan Cameron. Cameron, a race winner outright, of course, in the International GTOpen on more than one occasion during the 2013 campaign. 3 outright race wins. Giorgio Roda, the reigning GTS champions. This could be quite a good battle, because although Roda has caught Cameron fairly quickly, he's not caught him at the sort of rapidity that suggests he's just going to glide past. And they've still got under a quarter, or just under a quarter of the race remaining as they take their turns in running wide. Heading through the final turn now. Is Roda going to be able to get that run on Duncan Cameron towards first turn? He certainly would like to. Shows himself to the inside of Cameron as they jump onto the anchors, swing the cars uphill. And if Cameron can focus on getting his exit speed right, then he's not going to have any concerns. Only 9 seconds behind the pair of them as well is Michele Rugolo. Rugolo setting another fastest lap of the race, a 1 minute 31.1. Now this is going to be fascinating. Oh, and a mistake from Giorgio Roda, who gets it all wrong into turn 2, runs out wide. And it's Roda who blinks first. So Giorgio Roda will now have to spend another lap or two chasing down Cameron, but all the while, at the rate of 2 seconds per lap, Michele Rugolo is catching this battle. If Rugolo and Lathoras can get themselves up onto the podium, that would be quite the coup. So another look at it. Giorgio Roda just a little bit caught out, possibly by his closing speed on Duncan Cameron, having to take evasive action. There's Matt Griffin. And here is our race leader, Ezequiel Perez-Compagnac. And Perez-Compagnac setting some metronomically rapid lap times, another mid 1 minute 31, a 1:32.2 for Miguel Ramos in second place. But Ramos having been the driver with the most wins in the GTOpen Championship last year, with 7 victories and 10 podiums. But it was the retirements that cost him, and therefore this year instead the focus has been on not so much the outright race wins, but making sure there's always a good points haul when the checkered flag comes out. So the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren turns downhill from turn 3. Ramos continuing to slide back a little bit from Perez Compenac. Giorgio Roda, meanwhile, is in hot pursuit once more of Duncan Cameron. They have got Michele Rugolo now just 6.5 seconds back in that fight for third place. Alvaro Barber remains in 7th. So here is Tao Kanitsa, and there is Alvaro Barber. So Barber will be hoping to challenge for 6th place in fairly short order, but for whatever reason, the Lamborghini Gallardo not quite as startlingly competitive as it was yesterday. Barber's last lap of 1 minute 31.7, a best lap for that car of a 1 minute 31.3, so he's there or thereabouts, but with the gaps that opened up in the first phase of the race, a little bit too much for him to try and close down. Meanwhile, Cameron and Roda are through, separated by half a second. And Michele Rugolo, another fast lap of the race for Rugolo, 1 minute 30.958 for Rugolo in 5th position. The championship leader has got 3rd place in his sights. That is where he's looking to be at the checkered flag. And then we've got this battle for 6th and 7th just going on behind the fight for 3rd, 4th and 5th. The GT AM leader, by the way, is Claudio Sadanovic. He has got about 19 seconds worth of advantage over Felipe Barriaroth, which you would suspect is going to be enough. Nicola Bonucci is lapping at a pace that would have been certainly good enough to keep him in the hunt for rostrums, but unfortunately those couple of laps he lost in the pits means that he is outside the points in 10th place as we head into the final 10 minutes of the race. The 8th race of the International GT Open season here on a sweltering day in the Red Bull Ring in Austria. Ezequiel Perez Compenac is your race leader. 2nd place is Miguel Ramos. 3rd, Duncan Cameron. But for how long? Because he has got Giorgio Roda bottled up right behind him. And then we have got Michele Rugolo in 5th, catching both of them. Ashen faces in the Vallorba course garage. There's a big moment there for Barber. Coming out of turn 8, the car rattles over the curb. It's been another good lap from Rugolo. That was Tao Kanitsa's personal best lap of the race as he pulled clear of Alvaro Barber. The ART Lamborghini Gallardo, though, looking to be a little bit of a handful. The track temperature well in excess of 50 degrees centigrade because the situation of the Red Bull Ring is such that when there isn't cloud cover, the sun does beat down remorselessly on the track, and that is what has been happening so far today. So Alessandro Balzan toweled off and changed. Probably very fed up with the race, with the way that the race has unfolded. Alvaro Barber now closing back up onto terms with Tao Kanitsa. A pair of them would have raced each other several times previously in the International GT Open. Tao Kanitsa gets a bit out over the grass. The same for Barber. Both of them still pushing very, very hard. They're on their 33rd lap of the race. As they head on towards the final turn. Barber beginning to ask questions of those Michelin tyres, which you suspect that the rubber doesn't really want to answer. In terms of the fight for 3rd, by the way, that remains Duncan Cameron from Giorgio Roda and Michele Rugolo. The gap between Cameron and Roda remains static at 1 second, and then Rugolo is about 3.7 seconds back from Roda. So that mistake at turn 2 a few laps ago from Giorgio Roda, his best opportunity really of the race to overhaul Cameron, and thereafter he struggled to force the move. For Ezequiel Perez Compenac, though, he and Raffaele Giammaria going to be right up there inside the fight. Here is the battle for third place then. Headlights ablaze for Duncan Cameron. Giorgio Roda in pursuit, and Roda a little bit closer once more to Cameron. But if Duncan Cameron could hold on here from Giorgio Roda, that would be a really impressive drive from Cameron. Now, where is Michele Rugolo? There is Rugolo at the back of your picture. And how quickly can Rugolo catch this group? Well, there's been a real elevation of pace from both Cameron and Roda. Last time around, they were in the very low 1 minute 32s. It was a high 1 minute 31 for Michele Rugolo. 6.5 minutes to go. The battle for the final spot on the rostrum, as across the line they power now. And Cameron, fractionally under a second, his lead from Roda. A much better lap, though, from Michele Rugolo. He closes up onto the tail of the cars in front by about 1.5 seconds. We've got a yellow flag over at turn 7, so somebody has gone off the road, and here is the reason why. Oh, Alvaro Barber, a big spin into the gravel trap, and it's almost a carbon copy of Estoril in May, when late on in the race, Barber just pushing a little bit too hard, and the Lamborghini lets go. So Barber spinning away his chances. Oh, that's such a shame. After all the success for the ART Lamborghini yesterday, finishing in second position. The good news is that Barber is up and running. The bad news for Barber is that he's now slipped down to 8th. Here is another look at it. Just pushing very, very hard. The car breaks traction. Well, we saw a couple of moments ago that both Talkanitzer and Barber are out over onto the grass at turn 7. And that time a little bit too much from Barber. Now, here is what is increasingly a three-way fight for third place. It would suit Duncan Cameron enormously, one would suspect, if the checker flag were to be thrown out 5 minutes early. Because Cameron has got Giorgio Roda behind him, who he can handle, based on what we've seen. Michele Rugolo, which is slightly more of an unknown quantity. Plus, there is the dynamic, of course, that Rugolo is racing for championship points here. This is Giorgio Roda's seasonal debut in the International GTOpen. We've seen Cameron and Griffin once already this year in Paul Ricard, but it wasn't a hugely successful weekend for them, so they don't quite have that points position to defend in quite the same way. We're going to have time, depending on what point Perez Companac crosses the line, for 2 or 3 more laps. This battle is about 25 seconds back from Perez Companac, so I think we are going to have 3 more laps at the end of this one. Rugolo just setting the fastest first sector of anybody in the race. He's passing the Thoras. Watches nervously, because what he doesn't want to happen is Rugolo to unduly risk the car, as into the pit lane, unfortunately for Alvaro Barber. Bad news for Barber, that is good news for Nicola Bonucci and Alessandro Balzan, because it does promote the Villorba course Ferrari up into the points. And Perez Companac now leading by the best part of 10 seconds over Miguel Ramos. This is the fight for third. Duncan Cameron third, Giorgio Roda fourth, Michele Rugolo in 5th. And, well, what will Rugolo be able to do in the remaining 3 laps? Giorgio Roda closer to Duncan Cameron than he has been at any stage, barring that abortive move into turn 2. Michele Rugolo doesn't want to risk the car, but he flashes his headlights at Giorgio Roda. He wants his compatriot to move aside, because the difference between 3rd and 5th is 6 championship points, and given that the leading quartet of cars was separated by 11 points at the start of the race this afternoon, every point could be absolutely crucial at the end of the season. And Roda having a slightly slower run along the back straight. Is that going to give the opening to Michele Rugolo? No, it doesn't. Oh, and Cameron just a little bit late, taking the apex into turn 3. You get the sense the nerves are beginning to hit home now. And again, Cameron a little bit wayward out of 4. He gathers up nicely for 5. 2.5 laps remain here at the Red Bull Ring. This, the fight for 3rd position. And the 3 Ferraris, almost identical, barring some setup tweaks, and that is going to make it difficult for Rugolo to challenge because he knows where the balance of performance is strong. But he looks to the inside of Giorgio Roda into turn 8, and Rugolo slides through and takes 4th place away from Giorgio Roda. So that's 2 more points in the title fight for Michele Rugolo and passing the Thoras. We go into the penultimate lap of the race now in the fight for 3rd. And Rugolo already closing straight onto terms with Duncan Cameron. Will Cameron be able to hold on through to the checkered flag? That's what he'll be hoping to achieve. There is passing the Thoras as he watches his car challenge Cameron up towards turn 2, but there's nothing doing through turn 2. It's then that long run down the back straight. As Rugolo again just closes up onto Cameron. And I wonder if Michele Rugolo is going to be able to make that move in exactly the same place he overhauled Giorgio Roda last time through. Cameron, though, not going to make it easy here for Rugolo. Rugolo thinks about the pounce into turn 5. Can't quite do it. In fact, just skitters a little bit wide. Cameron just proving if he sticks to the racing line, he's going to make Rugolo do all the hard work as they head through turn 7. This is where Rugolo was able to make the manoeuvre on Giorgio Roda last time around. For Duncan Cameron, it is 5 kilometres until his first podium of the International GTOpen season. Rugolo can't challenge through the penultimate corner. And then into the final turn. And again, Cameron does what he needs to do. Rugolo gets a good exit though. Is he going to be able to challenge into turn 1? Cameron certainly thinks so. He moves across to defend his position. No team orders at play here. And instead, what Rugolo will try and do is force Cameron to that slower exit from turn 1, unless Cameron can get the block manoeuvre done on Michele Rugolo, which he does to an extent. So they charge uphill for the final time in the race. And Duncan Cameron, this has been an absolutely brilliant drive from Cameron, whatever the outcome. And he still defends from Michele Rugolo, and Rugolo can't find a way through into turn 2. Cameron defends. Rugolo will look for the switchback, but again, Cameron looks to block off the sister Ferrari. They head on towards turn 3. It's another heavy braking zone. It's another potential overtaking opportunity, and Cameron knows that Rugolo is coming. He covers the inside line, then moves to the middle of the road. Rugolo to the outside, and Rugolo's going to go for it around the outside of Duncan Cameron, but Cameron finds the pace and reclaims the position. So Cameron holds on to 3rd. We're just half a lap away. Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giammaria are going to win the 8th race of the season. That's their 3rd triumph of the year. And that is going to bring them right into championship fight. 2nd place will go to Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Perent. But who is going to get 3rd out of turn 7 we come? And this is Rugolo's favourite passing spot into turn 8, but he can't do it. Cameron determined to hold on through turn 8, just 1 corner to go. And again, Cameron defends from Michele Rugolo. Can he stick to the line as they sprint towards the flag? And this has been a brilliant defensive performance from Duncan Cameron as he and Matt Griffin take 3rd place here at the Red Bull Ring. Michele Rugolo and Passin Thoras into 4th, and Giorgio Roda taking 5th at the flag. Alexander Talkanitsa in 6th. And then Claudio Stanovic and Ilya Melnikov, they will be our GTM trophy winners. Well, for Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giammaria, that hoists them well and truly into the title fight. By my maths, I make it Ramos and Perent on 112 points, Giammaria and Perez-Compenac on 108 points, and Rugolo and Thoras on 107 points, with Balzan and Bonucci just 91 points for them, if even that. In fact, it is going to be no points for Bonucci and Balzan. So a look at the results then. Raffaele Giammaria and Ezequiel Perez-Compenac win it. 10 seconds clear of Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Perent. 3rd place for Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin. 4th to Passin Thoras and Michele Rugolo, who also get the fastest lap. 5th to Giorgio Roda. 6th to the Talkanitsas. 7th in the GTM win to Claudio Stanovic and Ilya Melnikov from Felipe Barrieros and Mads Rasmussen. Disappointment for Neblitsky and Barber. So here we have it in the Drivers' Championship then. And it now is a bit more of a 3-way fight. Perent and Ramos, 4 points up on Giammaria and Perez-Compenac. Rugolo and Lathoras just a single point back. The top 3 combinations covered by 5 points, and that non-point scoring finish for Bonucci and Balzan leaves them with a 22-point mountain to climb. But there are still 6 races to go, and I am sure plenty more twists and turns. Handshake from Gianmaria to Perez Kompanak, and quite rightly so. That was a really fine drive from the pair of them, perfectly managing the race strategy. In second place for Alvaro Prent and Miguel Ramos, more points in the Teo Martin Motorsport McLaren. They're still chasing their second win of the season, but they're notching up the podiums with regularity. And third for Matt Griffin, and I would say a career best drive from Duncan Cameron. That was an absolutely fantastic performance from Cameron, defending as he did in the remaining 20 minutes of the race. I don't think Miguel Ramos seems unduly disappointed with finishing as runner-up. As Alvaro Prent and the Teo Martin Motorsport team go to congratulate him, we will enjoy the slow motion action of Cameron and Griffin en route to third place. Ramos and Prent to second. Race winners Ezequiel Perez Kompanak and Rafael Gianmaria. They win their third race of the season. They move second in the championship. Let's hear from them.
Rafael Gianmaria, Ezequiel Perez Kompanak, another victory, the third one on this very warm weather. How was it, Rafael?
It was fantastic because it's the third win, so we closed the racing weekend, also this racing weekend, with the maximum wins. Was a difficult yesterday because we sacrificed the race one. We didn't put the tires at the driver change to have fresh tires for today, so we prefer arrive before in order not to have handicap time for today. And the strategy was good, was perfect, because we did good qualifying but good start, and then it was fantastic. Today is his birthday, so 21 years, 21, so great day for him, for me, for all the team.
Perfect. Happy birthday, Ezequiel. Your face says everything. It's very, very warm. Huh?
Yeah, it was tough, but thanks to Rafa, we came out of the pits in front of the McLaren. That was crucial. Then I could look in front, push, and here we are, perfect. And I would like to thank the team, everybody that helped us so much this weekend. And some words to Rafa, that had a heavy crash here in the test and has a strong heart, because today he proved he's really quick and very tough. Yeah. Congrats.
Well done, guys. Podium, some champagne.
Let's take a look back then at the highlights of Gianmaria and Perez Kompanak's triumph. Well, the charge to turn one was very congested. It was Alessandro Balzan, however, who got the jump. As behind, there was a little bit of contact between passing the Thoras and Alvaro Prent. Prent recovered well to move into second and to challenge Balzan, but he couldn't find a way past the Valour Course Ferrari, with Gianmaria holding station in third. Behind Anton Neblitsky and Matt Griffin, just a little bit close for comfort, but Griffin recovered very strongly to race himself up into contention, and that gave the opening for Duncan Cameron. Griffin not encountering too much resistance from passing the Thoras, as he made it through, whereas Anton Neblitsky gave a lot of resistance to Alexander Taukanitsa, but Taukanitsa able to elbow his way past. In the pit stops, the drama was that the Valour Course Ferrari wouldn't fire up with Bonucci at the wheel, and despite the best efforts of the Teo Martin Motorsport team, the McLaren of Miguel Ramos emerged just behind Ezequiel Perez Kompanak, and thereafter the Argentinian pulled clear. Eventually Bonucci rejoined the fray, as Alvaro Barber temporarily departed stage left, a huge spin at turn 7 that fortunately kept him out of the barriers. Then, with just a couple laps to go, the fight for third reached fever pitch, with Duncan Cameron holding off Michele Rugolo and Giorgio Roda. So it was the third win of the season for Ezequiel Perez Kompanak and Rafael Gianmaria. Second place enough to put Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Parent back into the top of the championship, with Duncan Cameron and Matt Griffin scoring an excellent third place finish. The GTM win going to Claudio Sadanovic and Ilya Melnikov. So time for celebrations on the podium for Griffin and Cameron. Runners-up, Miguel Ramos and Alvaro Parent. They are going to be heading into the summer break as the championship leaders, because we now have a couple of months to pause before the championship reconvenes at Spa-Francorchamps on the first weekend of September. And thereafter it's the first weekend of October in Monza and the first weekend of November for the circuit to Catalunya. But in the heat of the Red Bull Ring, it is Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giammaria who are triumphant for the AF Course Ferrari squad. AF Course, 2 cars on the rostrum and the GTM win as well. It's been an excellent weekend's racing.
Thank you so much for
The Italian national anthem to salute the winning team, AF Course, as we move on to the presentation of the trophies. So third place for Cameron and Griffin, and that really was some great driving from Cameron in the latter stages. Runners up, Ramos and Parent. They might have hoped for a bit more from pole position, but that slow start for Alvaro Parent meant that second place nonetheless a strong result, as it puts them at the front of the championship. And race winners AF Course, Ezequiel Perez-Compenac and Raffaele Giammaria, they enjoy the celebrations. So as the drivers pose the photos and then reach for the champagne, it's time for myself, Ben Evans, to say thank you very much for joining us at the Red Bull Ring this weekend. We will see you in several weeks' time as the International GTOpen season continues at Spa-Francorchamps. We